Good afternoon. Welcome to Composition 2. Today we'll be having Lecture 10. And we'll be introducing a new chapter, Chapter 4, titled Beauty and Aesthetics. Now, what the focus of this chapter is, or what this chapter is going to focus on, is on cause and effect. We'll get to know what cause and effect means. We'll get a better idea once we introduce the material presented in the chapter. However, the theme of this chapter is going to focus much on personal aesthetics, such as clothing, body paint, body piercing, and tattoos. Mostly tattoos, really. So, if you could imagine people without any aesthetics, without any method of ornament on their bodies, and imagine someone with some form of ornament on his or her body, in terms of paint or in terms of jewelry and clothing of a certain type, of course, not general clothing, but of a certain type. We're going to learn about that, basically read about it. We're going to read an article about it, and we'll get to know some of the cultural aspects that relate to these things. And hopefully you'll have enough time to think about this and reflect upon your own society and see how this stuff is kind of related to your environment. Now, I'd like you to turn to page 62 on your textbook, and on page 62 you would notice that there is a set of photos. Excuse me, I have a cold. There's a set of photos here. Let me just get rid of this. There's this modern formal wear where you have this young man wearing a formal suit. It's probably an executive of some sort. And you have these two individuals, which are called kabuki actors. And I think they're supposed to be men, by the way, because in Japanese tradition, I think women were not supposed to act, or are not supposed to act. So these people are, special types of actors, and they act in traditional theaters and plays. This gentleman here is painted his face, and he's from New Guinea, and this familiar type of henna. Of course, we're in this part of the world, we're familiar with henna, and they're called hennaed hands. Right. So all of these are types of aesthetics that are intended for a reason. They're used for a reason. So you won't find men in Japan dressed up like this just because they want to. There has to be a reason they did this. And that reason is they're just actors of a particular type, and at the time of probably at the time of taking this photo, they were acting. Another thing is looking at this executive here, this young man who's all dressed up, who probably works as an executive of some sort in a corporation or a big company, and his line of work, he's probably, I don't know, maybe a banker or something, and his line of work just makes him dress like that. Maybe he's a little bit less, a little bit loose when he's off duty, but when he's in his job environment, he's probably required to dress up like this in a formal way. And this traditional face paint here in New Guinea is probably a form of that tells us something. He's probably a groom. He's probably a chief in his tribe. He's probably a leader. We don't know yet. And of course, the henna, I don't need to elaborate on this because we are familiar with this type of ornament. And we know the occasions that women, mostly, use henna in their hands. So yeah, this is basically the idea of the chapter and the focus of the chapter. Now, if we go back, I ask you here to think of some examples on your own from our local community and see what could relate, what could be similar to these types. Right. But then again, we have to ask, the chapter asks you so many questions and provides so many answers, and probably the answers are endless. But we have to kind of ask this question: why do people change their natural appearances? Okay, so why? The question is why. There could be many types of reasons. I list them here. They're listed in your textbook, but just in case, I list them here to enhance beauty. So what does enhance mean? You're probably familiar with the word beauty, but you're not familiar with the word enhance. Enhance is to make more. So to make yourself more beautiful. To hide flaws. A flaw is kind of a something out of the ordinary, and you want to hide it. You could do that by changing your natural appearance. To indicate one's place in a group or in a society. So in that regard, you let's take an example of well, we don't use that in I'm trying to think of an example in our local society, but I can't. That has to do with body paint. But let me just give you an example. So if you have a king, usually wears a crown. Not, of course, in our local society, but you know, in folk culture or something. So when a king wears a crown, he indicates status. He indicates his place. It's indicative of his place in society. So when you see the crown, that means the only person who can wear the crown in the society is a king. And the same thing goes when a woman is going to get married. She would wear a white dress. in that gathering or in that group, no one else would wear a similar white dress, because the only person who's going to wear the white dress is the person getting married. Usually there's only one person getting married. Well, they might have more than one, but the person who wears a white dress in a group, that means usually they are getting married. Now, so in some cultures, some people would paint their faces in a particular color to indicate that they are of a particular status in that group or society. So another reason is to indicate certain age. Some people would, as opposed to child versus adult, or child or adult. So if you can imagine a tribe believing that if you are a child, you can paint your face, but you are limited to a number of colors. But once you enter adulthood, you are allowed then to paint your face with another set of colors. So it's kind of indicative of age, to indicate wealth also. So people can dress in a particular way, or wear their I don't know, paint or pierce their bodies in a particular way, or stick in certain places to indicate wealth, how wealthy they are. To disguise oneself or to become someone else, that's another reason. Or to protect oneself from the environment, that's of course another reason. So all of these reasons are said are used by people throughout the world, in many places of the world, for many different reasons. Now we would like to move on to the reading passage on page 64 to 66. We will read the passage on page 64 to 66 together and try to explain some of the ideas presented in it. I want you to try to follow and then try to read it on your own after we're done. Okay? Now, after that, we'll stop and then we'll go to the next lecture. So if you would care to turn your books to page 64. Let me just I hope this is clear, and I'll try to read very slowly so you could follow. So, tattoos across time and place. It's a permanent reminder of a temporary feeling. Signs. Excuse me. I was going to sneeze. Right. Sorry. Again. Tattoos across time and place. It's a permanent reminder of a temporary feeling. Sings Jimmy Buffett about some parents' dismay over their daughter's tattoo. Yet, those indelible body markings are more than a trend embraced by merchant marines, bikers, and goths in basic black. Tattoos arise from a rich cultural history dating back 5,000 years. So how old are tattoos? 5,000 years. They can date back to that. Now, the earliest example of tattoos so far discovered was found in 1991 on the frozen remains of the Copper Age Iceman. Scientists have named Otzi. His lower back, ankles, knees, and a foot were marked with a series of small lines made by rubbing powdered charcoal into vertical cuts. X-rays revealed bone degeneration at the site of each tattoo, leading researchers to believe that Otzi's people, ancestors of contemporary Central and Northern Europeans, may have used tattoos as medical treatment to reduce pain. As civilizations developed, tattoos took on other meanings. Egyptian funerary figures of female dancers from around 2000 BCE display the same abstract dot and dash tattoos on their bodies as those found on female mummies from the same time period. Later images represent Bes, god of fertility and revelry. Ancient Romans found no reason to celebrate tattoos, believing in the purity of the human form, except as brands for criminals and the condemned. Tattoos were banned in Rome. But over time, Roman attitudes toward tattoos changed. Fighting an army of Britons who wore their tattoos as badges of honor. Some Romans came to admire their enemies' ferocity as well as the symbols they wore. Soon, Roman soldiers were wearing their own body marks. Roman doctors even perfected the art of application and removal. Excuse me. Now, during the Crusades of the 11th and 12th centuries, warriors identified themselves with the mark of the Jerusalem cross so that they could be given a proper Christian burial if they died in battle. After the Crusades, tattooing largely disappeared in the West for a time, but continued to flourish in other places. By the early 18th century, European sailors encountered the inhabitants of the South and Central Pacific Islands. Their tattoos were an important part of the culture. When in mourning, Hawaiians tattooed their tongues with 3 dots. In Borneo, natives tattooed an eye on the palm of their hands and as a spiritual guide that would lead them to the next life. In 1769, Captain James Cook landed in Tahiti, where the word tattoo originated from ta-tau, which means to tap the mark into the body. One method island practitioners used for working their designs into the skin was with a razor-edged shell attached to the end of a stick. In New Zealand, Maori leaders signed treaties by drawing precise replicas of their moko, or personal facial tattoo. Such designs are still used to identify the wearer as a member of a certain family and to symbolize a person's achievements in life. Sorry, this is very long, I know, but bear with me. Right. Tattooing has been practiced in Japan for beautification, magic, and to mark criminals. Since around the 5th century BC, repressive laws, horrible cold. Repressive laws give rise to the exquisite Japanese designs known today. Restricted from wearing the ornate kimonos that adorned royalty and the elite, outraged merchants and the lower classes, rebelled by wearing tattooed bodysuits, covering their torsos. Covering their torsos with illustrations that began at the neck and extended to the elbow and above the knee, whereas hid the intricate designs beneath their clothing. Viewing the practice as subversive, the government outlawed tattoos in 1870 as it entered a new era of international relationships. As a result, tattooists went underground, where the art flourished as an expression of the wearer's inner longings and impulses. The Yakuza, the Japanese gangster class, embraced the body suits, even more so because they were illegal. Their elaborate designs usually represented an unresolved conflict and also included symbols of character traits that the wearer wanted to emulate. A carp represented A carp represented strength and perseverance. A lion stood for courage. Excuse me. A lion stood for courage. Such tattoos required long periods of pain caused by the artist's bundles of needles, endured by wearers as a show of allegiance to their beliefs. Today, Japanese tattoo wearers are devoted to the most colorful, complete, and exotic expression of the art. New York inventor Samuel O'Reilly patented the first electric tattoo machine. O'Reilly patented the first electric tattoo machine in 1891, making traditional tools a thing of the past in the West. By the end of the 1920s, American circuses employed more than 300 people with full-body tattoos who could earn an unprecedented $200 per week. For the next 50 years, tattoos gained a reputation as a mark of American fringe cultures, sailors, and World War II veterans. But today, tattoo connoisseurs take the spotlight at international fairs and conventions with Japanese bodysuits, Celtic symbols, black tribal motifs, and portraits of favorite celebrities. Tattooing is enjoying a big renaissance around the world, says Chuck Eldridge of the Tattoo Archive in Berkeley, California. Native American women in the Northwest are wearing chin tattoos again, reviving a culture practice from centuries before the white man arrived. And in answer to health concerns, artists in the South Pacific are slowly changing to modern equipment. Excuse me. Final paragraph, and we're done. The melting pot that is the United States has no rites of passage as a single American culture, says Ken Brown, a tattoo artist in Fredericksburg, Virginia. On some levels, getting a tattoo is like a milestone that marks a certain moment in a person's life. Ken still remembers one customer, an 80-year-old former Marine who had always wanted a tattoo but had been too afraid to get one. He came to me for his first tattoo, Ken says, and he told me, I figure I got 5 or 6 good years left in me, and I'm not going out without one. Thank you very much for being so patient and listening to me. It was slow. I'm sorry about that, and I have a cold, so that made it even more boring. So I apologize. Try to read it again on your own. There's a lot of information that you can use, and a lot of vocabulary that you definitely have to know. Thank you very much. I'll stop here and go to the next lecture, please.